Very good morning, all the viewers, including younger advocates and also general public. So, today video number 8 on Transfer of Property Act. ఆస్తి బదలాయింపు చట్టం మీద వీడియో నెంబర్ 8. Previously, the last video is video number 7. So, video number 7 covers section 9 and 10 of the Transfer of Property Act. So, section 9 is regarding oral partition, regarding oral transfers, including oral partition. So, what are all the transactions permitted by the Transfer of Property Act orally? Those we have dealt under section 9. As far as 10 is concerned, అన్యాక్రాంత అవరోధానికి షరతులు, that means restriction, condition restraining alienation. So, 10 is concerned with regard to alienation, restriction restraining alienation. So, that we have also dealt section as far as section 10 is concerned. That means an absolute restriction imposed by the transferor to the transferee is not valid under law. So, what type of restriction? That is, suppose A transfers property to B and put a condition that you should never sell this property. Whenever you sell this property, that will revert back to me. So, such an absolute restriction on conveyance of property is not allowed by the law. The condition will be void, transfer will be valid, the condition will be void. So, because this the transfer of the property cannot be kept in static, in the sense that it has to be transferred, because the man cannot keep a property beyond his life period. He has to transfer by virtue of a document, or if he dies intestate, it is go to the other's hands by virtue of a succession. So, this the keeping the property static is against public policy, because it is an economic activity should go on. So, for that purpose, any restriction on the transfer of property is void. So, that is what about section 10. Now, today I am dealing with section 11, 12, to some extent 13, 14 also. So, now what is section 11? So, section 11 is concerned, if an interest is created by virtue of a transfer of property, restriction on free enjoyment of the property, restriction repugnant to interest created, సృష్టించిన ప్రయోజనానికి అవరోధమైన ప్రతికూలత. On a transfer of property, an interest in the property is created absolutely in favor of any person, but the terms direct that such interest is to be applied or enjoyed by him in a particular manner. The transfer is entitled to receive and dispose of the property as if there was no such direction. So, once you transfer the property, you can't direct that transferee to enjoy the property according to your whims and fancies. It is up to him. So, this section 11 restricts that interest created, restriction on interest created, సృష్టించిన ప్రయోజనానికి అవరోధమైన ప్రతికూలత. అంటే ఆ ప్రయోజనాన్ని అనుభవించకుండా అవరోధాలు కల్పించడం అనేది సెక్షన్ 11. It will, under section 11 it will be void. So, here to understand this, suppose B purchases a shop room from A. So, he purchases a shop room for the purpose of doing business, but A imposes a condition, puts a condition in the deed that you should not conduct any business. Is that condition will be valid? You can't restrict him from enjoying the property, because the very purpose of purchasing a shop room is for the purpose of conducting business. So, indirectly or directly, A cannot impose any condition which ultimately affects his way of doing business. So, that type of condition is void under section 11. But there is an exception to this section 11. What is that exception is that when a part of land from a common bit is sold to, suppose say B by A, then A puts a condition that when you construct a house, so the height of the house should not be more than my house, so as to block light and free flow of air for the beneficial enjoyment of his plot. Such a limited restriction is permitted under exception to section 11. This is like this. ఒక స్థిరాస్తిలో ఒక భాగం బదిలీ చేస్తూ ఆ భాగంపై అట్టి షరతు విధిస్తే అది చెల్లుద్ది. సో అవుట్ ఆఫ్ ఏ కామన్ సపోజ్ 1000 square yards of site is being owned by A sold 500 square yards house site and put a condition that whenever you construct house, your height of the house should not be above my house, so as to block light and air. So such condition is a limited condition. Here this is not an absolute condition. He is not telling him not to sell your property or not to enjoy your property. What he says is, for beneficial enjoyment of my plot, you do like this. So a limited restriction is allowed under exception to section 11. I think I made it clear. Then as far as section 11 is concerned, an agreement not to partition property also is hit by section 11, because the right partition is a right for a joint family member to get partition. It is right. No one can put a restriction on that partition in an agreement, whatever it may be. So that is an absolute restriction. It is covered by under section 11. Then actually the exceptions to section 11 are concerned. Why the exception is given for the beneficial enjoyment of other part of the land. I will just practically I will give one illustration with my experience, so that you will definitely understand this. Suppose there are 4 brothers. So when 4 brothers are joint owners of 4 acres of land, when it is that means when it is a common tenement, when it is a common land, they are exercising their right of passage on the road situated on the eastern side of these 4 acres. Thereafter they effected partition and each got 1 acre. Now the person who got first share adjacent to road has to allow all other 3 brothers, those who have got shares below his land, to pass through his land to reach the road for ingress and egress, because previously the entire land is subjected to ingress and egress to the same road, on eastern side road, suppose. So similarly, on the last owner, that is a 4th sharer below, he is entitled to cross over the other sharer's land as of right to reach the road. So if such a recital is there in the partition deed as an abundant caution, that all the lower owners have every right of passage or cart track over the upper sharers land to reach the eastern side. So that is a limited restriction imposed on other sharers, which is permitted under this exception. So that is what I say, that passage rights and drainage rights are coming under this exception, and also right to air and have a good light, and restraining the neighbor from emitting some smoke which is hazardous to the health. These are all coming under exception to section 11. This category of rights comes under exception to the section 11 of the Transfer of Property Act. So I think I made it myself clear. Then Another example is that A convey an absolute interest in a farm to B by way of sale. The sale deed contains a direction that B shall not cut down trees. The direction is invalid and B can cut the trees. So, you can't dictate terms with the other man, that is your transferee or your vendee. Once you sell the property, your job is over. Even if you write certain rights in the sale deed or not, which section will operate? Section 8 of the TP Act. I have already explained in detail what is about section 8 of the TP Act. Because once the transfer affects, all the rights incidental to that land will automatically will transfer. These rights only, these passage rights, these, that and all, okay. All incidental rights, easementary rights and all. So, then section 8 comes into picture. So, your vendor cannot dictate what you have to do in your property. So, except for beneficial enjoyment of other part of the land, that is always there in the rights of drainage, easement rights. Without that exception, no one can enjoy their property without entering to the property of others. That already I covered in Easement Act also I covered this. Then coming to section 11 is over now. Section 11 which is restriction repugnant to interest created, సృష్టించిన ప్రయోజనానికి అవరోధాలు ప్రతికూలతలు కలిగించకూడదు. అయితే ఇంకోటి ఏంటంటే దాని యొక్క ఎక్సెప్షన్, అంటే ఒక పార్టీ కనుక స్థిరాస్తిలో ఒక భాగం బదిలీ చేస్తే వేరే భాగం మీద రిస్ట్రిక్షన్ పెట్టవచ్చు ఫర్ ది బెనిఫిషియల్ ఎంజాయ్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ అదర్ పార్ట్. దట్ ఈస్ ది ఎక్సెప్షన్. దాని కింద ఏమేంటి అనేది విత్ ఇలిస్ట్రేషన్స్ నేను చెప్పడం జరిగింది. ఇప్పుడు సెక్షన్ 12 ఇక్కడ బ్రీఫ్గా చెప్పాలంటే మీకు గుర్తుంటాయి. సెక్షన్ 10 వచ్చి రిస్ట్రిక్షన్ ఆన్ ఎలినేషన్ బ్రీఫ్గా. సెక్షన్ 11 వచ్చి రిస్ట్రిక్షన్ ఆన్ ఇంట్రెస్ట్ క్రియేటెడ్, దట్ ఈస్. సెక్షన్ 12 వచ్చి రిస్ట్రిక్షన్ వెన్ పర్సన్ వాజ్ డిక్లేర్డ్ యాజ్ ఇన్సాల్వెంట్ ఆర్ బ్యాంక్రప్ట్. So, this is 12. These are 3 you have to remember, for better remembrance I am telling. Now, coming to section 12. Section 12 is, I will explain section 12 in this way before going to the definition. Suppose if A sells property to B and put a condition that when you become insolvent, automatically the property will revert back. You cannot alienate that property to others. So, such a restriction is permitted or not. So, under section 12, such restriction is not permitted because condition making interest determinable on insolvency or attempted alienation. అంటే దివాలా తీసినప్పుడు అన్యాక్రాంత ప్రయత్నములో హక్కులపై పెట్టే షరతు. అట్లా చేయొచ్చా? నువ్వు దివాలా తీస్తే నీ ప్రాపర్టీ మళ్ళీ నాకు వచ్చేద్దనో లేకపోతే నువ్వు వేరే వాళ్ళకి అమ్మొద్దనో. Can that type of restriction be imposed on the transferee? So, the section 12 says no. Under section 12, when a property is transferred, it is not open to the transferor to provide that if the transferee becomes insolvent, endeavor to transfer or dispose of such property, that is transferee's interest, then the transferee's interest would cease. Such a condition or limitation in transfer is void. So, now, simply I told in the beginning itself. Why it is? Because if such a condition is put, the provisions of Provincial Insolvency Act or any Insolvency Act or Bankruptcy Acts, whatever it is, the provisions of those acts will not be utilized. There is no use of such acts. What is the use of Provincial Insolvency Act when this type of condition is allowed? That is why section 12 says that such type of condition is not valid, because after a person becomes insolvent, so all his properties will be in the hands of official receiver, not with the debtor. So the official receiver can apply those properties or the income of those properties to the all the creditors whoever is available, that depend upon the facts and circumstances of the case. So therefore, thus A settles property in trust for himself until his death or bankruptcy, and then on occurrence of either of these events, insolvency, death on his wife, A is then adjudged insolvent. A's interest in the property vests in the official receiver and not in his wife. So this type of condition will be futile. Why? Because after the person becomes insolvent, the property is vested in the official receiver, as I said so. So therefore, if this type of condition is allowed, there is no use of Insolvency Act. So one cannot put such conditions which inoperates the statute itself, provisions of statute. So that is important as far as section 12 is concerned. But here I have to bring another important thing to the notice of one and all, is that section 12 is exception to section 31. What is section 31? What is the rule contained in section 31 of the Transfer of Property Act? ఆస్తి బదలాయింపు చట్టంలో సెక్షన్ 31 ఏమంటుందంటే, 31 పర్మిట్స్ ఏ కండిషన్ ఇన్ ఎ ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ మేకింగ్ ది ట్రాన్స్ఫరీస్ ఇంట్రెస్ట్ డిటర్మైనబుల్ ఆన్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ ఆఫ్ కంటింజెన్సీ. సో అనిశ్చిత సంఘటన జరిగినా జరగకపోయినా ఆ సందర్భంలో బదిలీ ఆగిపోవటపై షరతు, తెలుగులో చెప్పాలంటే. సో ఏంటంటే, ఒక కండిషన్ ఆన్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ ఆఫ్ సర్టెన్ కండిషన్ ఆర్ నాట్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ ఆఫ్ సర్టెన్ కండిషన్, ది ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ విల్ నాట్ బి ఎఫెక్టివ్ అనేది సెక్షన్ 31 చెప్పుద్ది అనమాట. అంటే దీనికి ఎగ్జాంపుల్ చెప్పాలంటే, సపోజ్ నువ్వు మద్రాసు వెళ్ళి ఇంటర్మీడియట్ పరీక్షలు రాసి వచ్చిన తర్వాత ఈ ఆస్తి నీకు ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ చేస్తాం. దట్ ఈస్ కండిషన్ ప్రెసిడెంట్. వాట్ ఈస్ కండిషన్? దట్ ఈస్ కండిషన్ సబ్సిక్వెంట్. What is condition? Prior condition is that if you marry somebody, then only I will transfer this property. So this condition, prior condition, subsequent condition, in any way this transfer will be affected. So it is under section 31 of the TP Act. So as 31 of the TP Act ki section 12 is an exception. So section 12 lo atlanti conditions are not permitted. Enduku? Because provisions of insolvency law will be defeated. Provisions of insolvency law will be defeated because it is the condition affecting the statute, provisions of the statute. So this is another important aspect. The why I am pressed upon explaining about section 31. Section 12 of the TP Act is exception to section 31 of the TP Act. ఆస్తి బదలాయింపు చట్టంలో సెక్షన్ 31. Of course, these are always, it is there is an exception to leases properties, there is always an exception. Then another thing here I have to incidentally I have to bring to your knowledge is section 17 and 18. Of course, those when we come to section 17 and 18 I will explain in detail, but incidentally this has to be now mentioned. Why? Direction for accumulation of income, section 17 and 18. So when such direction for accumulation of the income పోయి చేస్తాయి, when it is allowed during the lifetime of the transferor, a period of 18 years from the date of transfer. సో ఈ రెండు సందర్భాల్లో తప్పితే ఈ డైరెక్షన్ ఫర్ అక్యుములేషన్ ఆఫ్ ఇన్కమ్ ఈ రెండు సందర్భాలకు మించి వేరే పీరియడ్లకి అప్లికేబుల్ కాదు. ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ వ్యాలిడ్. సో దిస్ జస్ట్ ఐ హ్యావ్ టు మేక్ ఎ మెన్షన్ హియర్ దట్ వెన్ during the lifetime of the transferor and a period of 18 years from the date of transfer. ఈ రెండు సందర్భాల్లో తప్పితే మిగతా పీరియడ్కి ఇది అప్లై కాదనమాట. సెక్షన్ 17 and 18. Now next comes sections 13, 14 and 18. These are also very, very important section in Transfer of Property Act. So here what this transfers for the benefit of unborn person, that I will only outlines I will cover, and next video I will explain detail because it has to be explained in detail. So for the transfer for the benefit of unborn person and జన్మించని వ్యక్తి యొక్క ప్రయోజనం కోసం ఆస్తి బదలాయింపు. ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ ఆఫ్ ప్రాపర్టీలో మనం వాట్ వీ హ్యావ్ ల్యాండ్ ఈజ్ ట్రాన్స్ఫరీ షుడ్ బి ఏ లివింగ్ పర్సన్. బట్ ఇక్కడ ఇంకా జన్మించలేదు, ఈజ్ అన్బార్న్డ్. సో అతను బెనిఫిట్ ఆఫ్ అన్బార్న్ పర్సన్, హౌ ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ కెన్ బి ఎఫెక్టెడ్. So this is one of the important subject in the Transfer of Property Act. So how it will be affected, and these are all we will discuss in the next video because it needs complete video. Then now to summarize whatever I have told now, section 10, 11 and 12, what are all as far as section 10 and 11 and 12 are concerned. Section 10 is imposing absolute restriction on alienation of the property, not to alienate further. So that is not allowed. It is against public policy. Section 11 is when restriction repugnant to interest created. To remember, I am making it short. So that is also not allowed under section 11, but there are exceptions are there. If the restriction is not absolute, a restriction is imposed during transfer for the beneficial enjoyment of other plot of the land. That limited restrictions such as passage right, drainage rights, and such as right to light, air, whatever it may be, those all comes under exception to section 11. Section 12 I have already said. Condition of non-alienation when he becomes insolvent, when a person becomes insolvent. So such a restriction cannot be imposed because the provisions of Insolvency Act will be defeated, and it is also against public policy. Of course, dintlo also I have given illustrations. So these three, section 10, 11, 12. And section 17 and 18 also briefly I said that direction for accumulation of the property when it is not valid. Only valid during the lifetime of the transferee, a period of 18 years from the date of transfer, and other than these periods, for other periods it is not valid. So that is I will explain it in detail when we come to section 17 and 18. Now coming to section 13, 14 and 18 also is very important, but today in brief what is this is transfer for the benefit of unborn person. జన్మించని వ్యక్తి ప్రయోజనం కోసం ఆస్తి బదిలీ ఎలా చేయాలి? ఎందుకంటే ట్రాన్స్ఫర్ ఆఫ్ ప్రాపర్టీ వీ హ్యావ్ సో ఫార్ గాన్ త్రూ వాట్ వీ హ్యావ్ ల్యాండ్ ఈస్ ట్రాన్స్ఫరీ షుడ్ బి ఏ లివింగ్ పర్సన్, బట్ నౌ ది జన్మించని వ్యక్తి అన్బార్న్డ్ పర్సన్, how the transfer has to be affected, that we will see in a detailed videos on the next video. So thank you very much for today's video. We will meet in next video. Have a good day. All the best.
రెడ్డిగూడెం చందన బ్రదర్స్ జ్యువెలర్స్ లో దీపావళి ధనతేరస్ మెగా గోల్డ్ సేల్ స్పెషల్ కౌంటర్ లో బంగారు ఆభరణాల విఏపై అప్ టు 60% ఆఫర్, గోల్డ్ ఐటమ్స్ పై రీజనబుల్ ఆఫర్, కాసుకు 1600 రూపాయలు తగ్గింపు, రెగ్యులర్ సిల్వర్ ఐటమ్స్ మేకింగ్ చార్జెస్ పై 100% ఆఫ్, జాబిలమ్మ వెండిపూల వానల వెన్నెలకే వన్నె తెచ్చే వెలుగులతో 92.5 ప్రీమియం సిల్వర్ జ్యువెలరీ కలెక్షన్ పై ఫ్లాట్ 20% ఆఫ్. ఈ ఆఫర్ అక్టోబర్ 17, 18, 19 తేదీలలో కేవలం 3 రోజులు మాత్రమే. విచ్చేయండి చందన బ్రదర్స్, ఏలూరు మరియు జంగారెడ్డిగూడెం.